He stood in the middle of that locker room, hugged Steph Curry, hugged Draymond Green, and said the words nobody wanted to hear. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I love you guys to death. Thank you. And just like that, it felt like a funeral. Not the kind with tears and black suits. The kind where everyone is smiling through the pain because they know something beautiful is ending. The kind of goodbye that sneaks up on you. Quiet, honest, heartbreaking. The Warriors had just been knocked out of the play-in round by the Phoenix Suns. Season over. And the man who had built one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history was walking off the court, not knowing if he'd ever walk back on it. 3 words. That's all it took to shake an entire fan base. I don't know, but here's the thing. And this is where the story gets really interesting. 3 weeks later, everything changed because Steve Kerr is coming back. He signed a brand new 2-year contract to return as the Golden State Warriors head coach. 2 more years through the 2027 to 2028 season. And he's still the highest paid coach in the entire NBA. The man who walked off the floor like it might be over, walked back, and like he never left. And Warriors fans, they lost their minds. So today, we're breaking down everything. We're going back to that moment in April when it all fell apart. We're walking through those 3 brutal weeks when nobody knew what was going to happen. We're going to talk about what Steph Curry said, what Draymond Green said, what Joe Lacob did, what the meetings looked like, what the turning point was, and what all of this means for the future of the Golden State Warriors. Because this isn't just a coaching announcement. This is a story about loyalty, about legacy, about a man looking himself in the mirror and asking, am I done? Am I really done? And the answer, as it turns out, is absolutely not. Let's go back to the beginning. April 17th, 2026. Chase Center, San Francisco, California. The Golden State Warriors are playing the Phoenix Suns in the NBA play-in tournament. And if you weren't watching this game, let me paint the picture for you. This wasn't a close game. This wasn't a we almost had them kind of night. The Warriors lost 111 to 96. They were outplayed, outcoached, outfought. And when that final buzzer sounded, there was a strange stillness that settled over the arena. The kind of stillness that tells you something bigger than a basketball game just ended, because it had. Steve Kerr walked to center court, and in that moment, the cameras caught it. He didn't look like a man who had won 4 NBA championships. He didn't look like a coaching legend. He looked like a 60-year-old man who had just carried something very heavy for a very long time and was finally setting it down. His eyes were searching. His face was unreadable. And when he got to Steph Curry and Draymond Green, he pulled them both close. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I love you guys to death. Thank you. Now, stop for a second and think about what that means. Steph Curry has been a Warrior his entire career. His whole career. Draymond Green, same thing. These 2 men built something with Steve Kerr that most coaches never get to be a part of in an entire lifetime. For championships. 6 Western Conference Finals appearances. A dynasty that redefined how basketball is played at the highest level. And in that moment on the court, it sounded like Steve Kerr was saying goodbye to all of it. The reporters caught it. The cameras caught it. And Warriors fans watching at home caught it too. Social media went absolutely nuclear. Within hours, the speculation was everywhere. Is Kerr done? Should he retire? Is this the end of an era? Will they fire him? Will he walk away? The hot takes were flying from every direction. Some people said the Warriors should move on and start fresh. Other people said letting Steve Kerr go will be the worst decision the organization had ever made. Some said he looked tired. Others said he deserved to go out on his own terms. And then Steve Kerr himself started talking. After the game, in that press conference room under the bright lights, Kerr sat down and said something that caught everyone off guard. He said, I still love coaching, but I get it. These jobs all have an expiration date. There's a run that happens, and when the run ends, sometimes it's time for new blood and new ideas. And there it was. New blood, new ideas. 2 phrases that, coming from a head coach after a season-ending loss, mean only one thing. He was leaving the door wide open. He wasn't saying he was done. But he wasn't saying he was coming back either. He was doing that thing that people do when they're not quite ready to admit what they already know. He was letting the idea breathe. And that idea, the idea that Steve Kerr might actually walk away from the Golden State Warriors, was terrifying to a lot of people. Not just the fans, not just the media, but the players, the front office, and honestly, probably Kerr himself. Let's talk about who Steve Kerr actually is. Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in championships and records and statistics that we forget what makes this man different from every other coach in the league. Steve Kerr grew up in the Middle East. His father was a university president in Lebanon. He grew up around different cultures, different perspectives, different ways of seeing the world. And then his father was assassinated. When Kerr was just 18 years old, his father was killed by gunmen in Beirut, Lebanon. That kind of loss, that kind of traumatic, unthinkable loss, doesn't just go away. It shapes everything. It shapes who you become. Kerr went on to play college basketball at Arizona, then had a long and successful NBA playing career. He was a sharpshooter, a role player on legendary teams. The Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, the San Antonio Spurs with Tim Duncan. He won 5 championships as a player. 5. That's not a typo. The man won 5 championships before he ever held a clipboard on the sideline, and then he became a coach. He was hired by the Warriors in May 2014. And here's the thing that makes this absolutely wild. He had other options. Phil Jackson, his former coach, the man who taught him so much, offered the head coaching job with the New York Knicks. The Knicks, one of the most iconic franchises in NBA history, wanted Steve Kerr. He said no. He chose Golden State. He chose a team in San Francisco with a young point guard named Stephen Curry, who had already shown flashes of brilliance but hadn't yet become, well, Steph Curry. Kerr looked at that situation and said, "This is where I want to be." And then, in his very first season, he won the NBA championship. Think about that. First season. First year as a head coach. He walked into that job and walked out with a ring. The Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6 games. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, it didn't matter. The Warriors had a new coach, a new system, a new identity, and they were unstoppable. The next year, they won 73 games. 73. In an 82-game season. That's a record that still stands today. They had the best regular season in NBA history. And even though the Oklahoma City Thunder and Kevin Durant and the Cleveland Cavaliers would deny them in those finals, what Kerr was building was something no one had ever seen before. Then Kevin Durant joined, and the Dynasty hit a different level entirely. Back-to-back championships in 2017 and 2018. And again in 2022 when the Durant era was over and people had counted the Warriors out, Kerr found another gear. He led that team. A team without Durant, a team that had gone through injuries and controversy and everything between, all the way back to the top, for championships. 4. And now, here he is at 60 years old, being asked whether he's ready to walk away from all of it. So what happened in those 3 weeks between April 17th and May 10th? That's the question everyone was asking. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks that we don't know and it's uncertain and discussions are ongoing. 3 weeks that felt like forever to Warriors fans who just wanted an answer. Here's what was actually happening. First, Kerr stepped away from basketball completely. He took about a week and just breathed. No press conferences. No appearances. Just space. He went on a golf trip. He spent time with his family. He let himself decompress from what had been an incredibly difficult season. A season that included injuries to key players, front office drama, roster uncertainty, and ultimately, a play-in elimination. And during that week, Kerr was genuinely asking himself the hard questions. Do I still want this? Not do I have to? Not what do people want from me? But do I, Steve Kerr, still want to coach basketball? Is there still fire there? The answer surprised even him. Yes, absolutely yes. Because here's the thing about Steve Kerr that people sometimes underestimate. This man is wired for competition. He doesn't just love basketball abstractly, the way you might love a movie or a song. He loves the grind of it, the scheming, the problem solving, the locker room relationships, the 2 a.m. film sessions, the adjustments at halftime, the chess match of the NBA. He loves all of it, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. But loving the job wasn't enough on its own. There were other questions that needed answering. What would the roster look like going forward? Would the Warriors actually commit to trying to compete? Or were they headed into a full rebuild that might make coaching there less appealing? Because there's a real difference between coaching a team that's trying to win now and coaching a team that's tearing everything down. Kerr needed to know which one he was signing up for. And so, the meetings began. On April 24th, just about a week after the season ended, Steve Kerr sat down with Warriors CEO Joe Lacob and General Manager Mike Dunleavy. A private meeting, behind closed doors. The kind of meeting where real things get said and real decisions get made. And according to every report that came out of that room, it went well, really well. ESPN called those initial discussions productive. That word, productive, was the first signal that something might actually be turning around. Because just days before that meeting, sources close to the Warriors had told NBC Sports Bay Area reporter Monty Poole that people inside the organization who had originally believed Kerr would leave were now changing their minds. The tide was shifting. Something was in the air. And then a few days later, more movement, more conversations, the picture getting clearer. And then on Saturday, May 10th, boom, Shams Charania broke it first, as he always does. Breaking. Steve Kerr has agreed on a new 2-year contract to return as head coach of the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors' kingdom exploded. Now, let's talk about what people actually said when this news dropped. Because the reactions, the immediate, raw, unfiltered reactions from fans, from players, from media, tell you everything you need to know about what Steve Kerr means to this franchise. Draymond Green. Let's start there. Because Draymond doesn't say things to be nice. He doesn't do diplomatic, carefully worded PR statements. When Draymond Green talks, it's real. And what he said before the deal was even officially done back in April was this: we don't want to play for anyone else. We built this thing together. Just as much impact as Steph Curry has had, as I've had, as Clay had, Steve's had. Read that again. Draymond Green, one of the most important players in the history of this franchise, put Steve Kerr on the same level as Steph Curry, Draymond himself, and Klay Thompson. He included the coach in the inner circle of the dynasty. That's not something players do casually. And then there's Steph Curry, the face of the franchise, the guy whose opinions carry more weight in that building than almost anyone else. Steph was asked about Kerr returning, and he didn't pretend it didn't matter to him. He made his feelings clear. He wanted Kerr back, badly, but he put one condition on it. He said he wanted Kerr to want to come back. He didn't want a coach who was staying out of obligation or loyalty or habit. He wanted a coach who still believed he was the right man for the job and still had the hunger to do it. That matters because Steph Curry knows something about hunger. He knows what it looks like when a competitor still has that fire in their eyes versus when the tank is running low. And when Kerr came back and said yes, Steph knew it was real. And the fans? Oh, the fans. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all of it lit up like Chase Center during a playoff game. Warriors fans were writing essays, making videos, recording podcasts, calling radio stations. Because for these fans, Steve Kerr isn't just a coach. He's a symbol. He represents something bigger. He represents the era when everything clicked. When the Warriors weren't just a basketball team, but a cultural moment. When going to a Warriors game meant watching something you'd never seen before. And knowing that symbol isn't going anywhere, at least not yet, that meant everything. But let's be honest for a second, because this is where I want to pump the brakes slightly and give you the full picture. Not just the celebration, not just the champagne, because there are real questions surrounding this return. The Warriors have not been good. Let's just say that plainly. The 2025-26 season was difficult. Injuries. Drama. The situation with Jonathan Kuminga, one of the team's most talented young players, got uncomfortable, and he eventually left the organization. Key players missed significant time. The team missed the playoffs outright and had to fight their way through the play-in, where they ultimately lost. This is not the Dynasty Warriors. This is a team in transition. A team that's trying to figure out what it is after the greatest run in franchise history. And that's not easy. That's genuinely hard. For the players, for the coaching staff, for the front office, for everyone. And there are people, smart people, legitimate NBA observers, who wonder whether a different coach, someone with fresh ideas and a different energy, might be better suited to lead the next chapter of this franchise. Not because Kerr has lost it, not because he's not still talented, but because sometimes, after more than a decade in the same building with the same people, change is what sparks a new beginning. Those are fair questions. They deserve to be asked. But here's the counter-argument, and it's a strong one. The Warriors are not in rebuild mode. At least not a full, burn-it-all-down rebuild. They still have Steph Curry. And Steph Curry is one of the 2 or 3 greatest players on earth. As long as Steph is here, this team is trying to compete. This team is trying to win. And you don't want to bring in a new and proven coach to lead your best player's final competitive years. You want experience. You want someone who Steph trusts completely. You want someone who the players respect, who understands the offensive system, who knows how to manage personalities and egos and the unique pressures of playing for the Golden State Warriors. And right now, in 2026, that person is Steve Kerr. Furthermore, and this is important, sources close to the situation made it clear that Kerr's return signals something specific about the Warriors' plans for the offseason. They're not tanking. They're not punting on the Steph Curry era. They're going to try to reform the roster this summer in a meaningful way, adding pieces that make the Warriors more competitive right now, not 3 years from now. That's a big deal. That's a commitment from the organization to its greatest player and its most successful coach. Now here's the question that's on everyone's mind after the contract news dropped. What does this actually mean for the future? Like, concretely, what changes? What gets better? What does the 2026 to 27 Warriors team look like? And what can we realistically expect from them? Let's break it down. First, the roster's in change. It has to. The current group, as currently constructed, is not a playoff team. It's a play-in team at best. And even that proved to be a struggle. Changes need to happen. And the Warriors front office knows that. Dunleavy knows it. Lacob knows it. Kerr knows it. The question is how those changes happen. Do they make a big trade? Do they pursue a major free agent? Could they actually make a run at a superstar like Giannis Antetokounmpo? Could Kawhi Leonard be in the picture? These names are being floated because the Warriors need to add a legitimate second star alongside Steph Curry. And here's the fascinating wrinkle. The NBA draft lottery. The Warriors have a lottery pick. If they jump up into the top 4 picks, they suddenly have a choice to make. Do they use that pick to draft a young, high-ceiling prospect and commit to a slightly longer timeline? Or do they use that pick as trade ammunition to go get a proven star right now? If they can land a big fish, a legitimate second star, Kerr's coaching ceiling goes way up. Because we know what Kerr can do when he has elite talent. We've seen it 4 times. Give him the pieces. And he'll figure out how to win. But even if the offseason moves don't go perfectly, even if the big trade doesn't happen and the draft pick doesn't pan out, there's still something incredibly valuable about Kerr being on that sideline. And it's this. Steph Curry deserves to go out the right way. We are likely in the final chapter of Steph Curry's career as an elite, max contract NBA player. And I want to say that carefully because Steph is not old. He's not done. But time moves fast in the NBA. The window that remains is real, and it is finite. And if the Warriors are going to give Steph one more run at greatness, one more legitimate shot at a championship in the twilight of his career, they want that run to happen with the coach who knows him best. The coach who built the system around him. The coach who was there for every single one of his 4 championships. The coach who, on a cold April night in San Francisco, wrapped his arms around him and said, "I love you to death." That's the coach Steph Curry is going to be playing for next season. And that's not nothing. That's everything. Let's zoom out even further now, because I want you to feel the full weight of what we're actually watching here. Steve Kerr has been the Warriors' head coach for 12 seasons. 12. Do you know how rare that is in professional basketball? Head coaches in the NBA get fired constantly. It's brutal. One bad season, one falling out with a star player, one disgruntled front office executive, and you're out. The average head coaching tenure in the NBA is roughly 3 or 4 years before something shifts and someone new comes in. Steve Kerr has been there for 12, going on 13, going on potentially 14. And here's what's even more remarkable. He's been there through all of it. The highs that sports rarely produce. The absolute, soul-crushing lows that almost no franchise has to survive. He coached through Klay Thompson's torn ACL. He coached through Kevin Durant leaving. He coached through the massive roster transitions. He coached through global pandemics and arenas with no fans and bubble basketball in Orlando. He coached through seasons where the Warriors went from elite contenders to lottery-bound rebuilders and back again. He survived all of it, and he kept coaching, and he kept winning. And now, at 60 years old, when he could easily walk into any television studio in America and make millions of dollars sitting in a comfortable chair talking about basketball with a camera pointed at his face, he chose to stay on the bench. He chose the clipboard. He chose the 6 a.m. shoot-arounds and the film sessions and the press conferences after losses and the sleepless nights before big games. Because that's who Steve Kerr is. He's not doing this for money. He's making $17.5 million a year, the most of any coach in the league, so the money is clearly fine. He's not doing this to pad his resume. His resume is already one of the greatest coaching resumes in the history of the sport. He's doing this because he genuinely, authentically, deeply loves coaching basketball. And that kind of love is rare. Genuinely rare. We live in a world where professional burnout is real and constant, where people, even incredibly successful people, lose their passion for the thing that made them great, where the grinding weight of expectation and pressure and scrutiny wears people down until they have nothing left to give. Steve Kerr looked all of that in the face and said, "Still got more. Still want to do this." And the Warriors, wisely, smartly, correctly, said yes. There's one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap this up. And it's something that doesn't get mentioned enough in the sports media world, but it deserves to be said. Steve Kerr is more than a basketball coach. He always has been. He's a man who speaks out when he believes something matters. He's used his platform, one of the most visible platforms in American sports, to talk about things that are difficult and uncomfortable and important. He's spoken about gun violence, about his father's murder, about mental health, about social justice. He doesn't hide behind, "I'm just here to talk about basketball." He never has. And that kind of courage, the willingness to be fully human in a world that often tells athletes and coaches to just shut up and bounce the ball, that kind of courage filters down into a locker room. It shapes the culture. It tells players that they're allowed to be full people, not just basketball assets. The Warriors' locker room reflects that. It's a locker room that talks, that thinks, that argues and debates and pushes back. It's a locker room where players are empowered to have voices. And a huge part of that comes from the top, from a man on the sideline who has never pretended to be something he's not. So when Steve Kerr signed that new contract, the Warriors didn't just get a championship-winning coach. They got that whole person back. They got the culture. They got the standard. They got the leader. And in a league where culture is everything, where the best players in the world have choices about where they go and who they play for, having a man like Steve Kerr leading your franchise is not a small thing. It's massive. Okay, let's bring this home. Let's talk about what happens next. It's May 2026. The NBA draft lottery is happening. The off-season is about to begin. The Warriors know who their coach is. Now they need to figure out who their team is. This is the most important off-season for the Golden State Warriors in several years. Maybe since the summer. They signed Kevin Durant back in 2016. Because the decisions they make this summer will determine whether Steve Kerr's final years on the bench are spent competing for championships or scrapping for play-in spots. The front office has a swing. They can't be timid. They can't shuffle the deck chairs and call it a rebuild. Not with Steph Curry still in that building. Not with Steve Kerr signed for 2 more years. Not with 4 championship banners hanging in Chase Center as a daily reminder of what this franchise is capable of. They have to go get a player, a real player, a star who can play alongside Steph, and change the math on this team. Whether that a bold trade, a free agent signing, or getting lottery lucky in the draft, something has to change. Because the story of Steve Kerr returning isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something. A new chapter, a new challenge, a new chance to build something that can compete. And here's what I believe, what I genuinely believe about all of this. If the Warriors give Steve Kerr the pieces he needs, he will find a way. He will always find a way. Because that's what he does. That's who he is. He took a young Steph Curry and built a dynasty. He integrated Kevin Durant without breaking anyone's spirit. He survived the collapse and came back with a championship. He navigated the transition and kept coaching. This man does not quit. This man does not fold. This man figures it out. And I don't know what the next 2 years look like. I don't know if the Warriors make the playoffs, win the finals, or fall short again. Nobody knows. That's the beauty of sports. That's why we watch. But I do know this. When the Warriors tip off next season, Steve Kerr is going to be on that sideline. He's going to be drawing up plays, screaming at referees, putting his arm around Steph Curry, and coaching basketball the way he's been coaching it for 12 years, with intelligence, with passion, with care, with everything he has. And for Warriors fans, for the people who've been on this ride since the beginning, that's not just good news. That's a gift. Because you don't always get to see a coach like Steve Kerr. You don't always get this kind of loyalty, this kind of longevity, this kind of genuine love for a franchise and its players. You're lucky to have him. And deep down, I think Steve Kerr knows he's lucky to have them too. The story isn't over. Not even close. Steve Kerr is back. The Warriors are back. And whatever comes next, whatever this new chapter holds, one thing is absolutely certain. It's going to be worth watching. If you made it this far, thank you, genuinely. Drop a comment below and tell me this. Do you think the Warriors made the right move bringing Kerr back? Do you think they can compete next season? And what move do you think they need to make this offseason to actually be a contender again? Hit the like button if you want more Warriors content. Subscribe if you're not already here. We cover everything Warriors all year long, and right now it's getting good again. The dynasty might not be dead. It might just be resting. And the man who built it just agreed to wake it back up. Steve Kerr, Warriors head coach, year 13. Let's ride.